Hey guys, tonight we're going on an unremarkable journey, one so gloriously dull, so magnificently average, it might just be the perfect thing to lull you to sleep. Picture a misty morning in a quiet Japanese valley. No clanging swords, no heroic cries, just the soft slosh of muddy sandals and the distant squawk of a very annoyed chicken. This is not the story of a legendary warrior who changed history. This is the life of a samurai who kind of just existed. You're born in the spring of 1454, not in a castle but in a thatched hut that leaks slightly when it rains. Your parents, both short, suspiciously similar in the face and always arguing about pickled radishes, welcome you with all the enthusiasm of people who really just wanted a daughter this time. You probably won't survive this century. Most people don't. There are wars, floods, famines, and a mysterious illness going around called bad air. But hey, for now you're swaddled in rice straw and your biggest concern is not freezing to death. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is where you are. Always fun to see who else is drifting off around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The early years are fine. Your village, Kumanakoji, is tucked into a sleepy corner of the Yamato province. It's got 7 homes, 3 goats, 1 angry monk, and a bridge that collapses whenever someone important visits. Your father, a low-ranking samurai, mostly guards grain shipments and grumbles about back pain. Your mother makes miso paste and invents increasingly creative ways to insult the neighbors. As a toddler, you're not exactly a prodigy. You walk late, talk later, and once mistake a frog for your grandmother. But no one's worried. Expectations are low. Your father hopes you'll grow into your armor someday. Your mother just hopes you stop chewing on sandals. Your first memory? Probably mud. You spend a lot of time in it, sliding, eating, sinking slightly while contemplating the universe. Life in rural 15th century Japan doesn't come with toys. Instead, you get a stick, a pebble, and if you're lucky, a beetle that doesn't bite. The seasons roll on. You watch as the cherry blossoms bloom and immediately get sneezed on by your cousin, who's allergic to everything beautiful. Summer brings fireflies and itchy bites. Autumn smells like sweet potatoes and burning leaves. Winter is just cold and hungry. At age 4, you nearly drown in a shallow pond trying to chase a duck. It's your first real brush with death. The duck is fine. Your pride, not so much. By age 5, you're expected to start helping with chores. That means fetching water, feeding the chickens, and occasionally being blamed for things the goat did. It's not glamorous, but it teaches you humility, which is convenient because you have nothing else going for you yet. Your father starts telling you stories of famous warriors, Minamoto no Yoshitsune, who rode into battle with elegance and flair. You, meanwhile, trip over your own sandals trying to walk in a straight line. Still, there's hope. Bushido, the way of the warrior, isn't about perfection. It's about showing up and not dying too quickly. You might just manage that. One evening, a traveling monk visits the village and tells tales of great cities, Kyoto, Nara, where the buildings touch the sky and people bathe more than once a month. You're captivated. Then the monk sneezes, declares your village cursed, and leaves in a hurry. A neighbor teaches you your first kanji character, rice. It's appropriate. You see it, eat it, carry it, and occasionally trip over bags of it. You can't write it well, but you recognize it in your dreams. Around your 6th birthday, something monumental happens. You get your first wooden sword. It's too long, poorly balanced, and smells faintly of pickled turnips. But it's yours. You swing it wildly, nearly taking out a chicken and your uncle's dignity in one go. Your father beams with pride until you hit yourself in the shin and cry for 45 minutes. But still, progress. This is the beginning of something, maybe. You're not strong, fast, or particularly clever, but you show up, you try, you endure. And in the 1400s, that's basically the same as being special. Now, let's be honest. No one in your village thinks you're going to be great. But they don't think you'll be a complete failure either. You are the lukewarm porridge of samurai children, filling, present, and unlikely to cause food poisoning. Historians still argue whether boys like you, born to low-ranking warriors in rural areas, had real upward mobility, or whether it was all just muddy boots and blind loyalty. One scroll suggests some rose to prominence. Another just has a drawing of a horse that looks suspiciously like a dog. One fringe theory says samurai families like yours often doubled as local tax collectors. But in your case, the only thing you ever collect is splinters. Still, every hero starts somewhere, and you've started in the most unremarkable way imaginable, which, all things considered, is kind of perfect for us tonight. You wake up before sunrise, not because you want to, but because your neighbor's rooster has no sense of boundaries. It's the third morning in a row he's crowed directly outside your window, if you can call a hole in the wall a window, and you start to suspect it's personal. At 7 years old, you've officially entered the age of being mildly useful. That means you're now responsible for hauling water from the stream, helping clean the straw from the horse stables, and feeding the family's single pig. A pig who, frankly, has a better attitude than your cousin. The pig's name is Maru. He likes fermented yams and hates everyone else. There's no glamour in this part of your life. Before any visions of samurai glory, you're elbow-deep in chores. You stir miso paste, scrape mold off pickled daikon, and once spend an entire afternoon trying to catch a chicken that definitely does not want to be caught. You fail. The chicken wins. She looks you in the eye as she walks away. It's humbling. You start to understand that for most low-ranking samurai families, daily life looks less like heroic duels and more like arguing over who used the last of the firewood. While your father trains with his katana every other morning, mostly to impress your mother, who remains unimpressed, you're tasked with learning how to tie bundles of firewood tightly and carry them without whining. That apparently is the first step toward honor. Occasionally, your father shares tales from his early years in service. They all seem to involve waiting in the rain, eating cold rice, or nearly dying of boredom. He says, "This is the samurai way," and sighs deeply, then eats a pickled plum with a look that suggests he's trying to forget most of it. Meanwhile, you practice sword movements with your wooden bakken. It's too heavy and you don't quite have the wrist strength yet, but you manage a passable stance. One time you accidentally hit a rock and knock yourself over. You lie there for a while contemplating the sky. Maybe swordplay isn't your thing, but you're also learning other things. How to read a few more kanji, how to politely bow without falling over, and most importantly, how to pretend to be paying attention when the village elder starts one of his long, droning speeches about back in his day. That's a skill you'll use often. Food is simple. Rice if you're lucky, barley if you're not, and millet if someone's being punished. Your mother once tries to stretch a soup with boiled bamboo bark. It is chewy. You pretend to enjoy it. That, too, is part of your training. There are a few brief moments of excitement. Once, a traveling peddler passes through the village with strange trinkets from Kyoto, combs carved from tortoiseshell, tiny glass beads, a flute that only plays one note. You trade a handful of dried persimmons for a bamboo whistle. It sounds terrible, but it's yours. On another day, a samurai from a nearby town rides through, armor gleaming in the sunlight. The villagers gather in awe. You try to stand straight and tall like him, but your sandal breaks mid-bow and you trip into a basket of radishes. The samurai doesn't notice, or maybe he does and chooses to forget. Still, these are the highlights. Most days are about mud. Mud in the fields, mud on your clothes, mud in places you didn't know could hold mud. There's an art to walking across wet ground without losing a sandal, and you're slowly mastering it. One quirky thing you notice, your family keeps a household charm above the door, a tiny carved monkey holding a rice stalk. Your mother insists it keeps sickness away. You don't question it, especially after you overhear her muttering threats to the charm after your father catches a cold. Superstition is, after all, just another part of survival. Historians still argue whether rural samurai families had a distinctly different childhood experience from commoners. Some evidence suggests strict martial discipline began at age 5. Other scholars believe many kids like you spent more time chasing pigs than perfecting sword forms. Based on your bruised knee and pig-related trauma, You lean toward the latter theory. At night, you lie on a thin futon next to your younger brother, who snores like a congested bear. The walls creak when the wind blows, and the thatch roof drops the occasional straw right onto your forehead. You stare up at the rafters and think about the wider world, castles, city lights, maybe even a bathhouse that doesn't smell like cabbage. But for now, your world is narrow. Chores, food, practice, sleep, repeat. One evening, your father calls you outside. The sky is clear, stars scattered like spilled salt. He hands you a small piece of carved wood. It's shaped like a fox. For protection, he says. Not that it works, but maybe it makes you feel better. You thank him. It's the nicest thing he's given you that wasn't a lecture. You tuck it into your sleeve that night. The future might not be exciting, but at least it's yours. You are now 6 years old and wielding a weapon. Well, technically, it's a slightly cracked wooden sword that smells faintly of vinegar and old fish. But to you, it might as well be forged by divine smiths atop Mount Fuji. It was passed down from your cousin who cried when he gave it up. Not out of sentiment, he'd just smacked his shin with it one too many times. Training begins early, but not like the grandiose training montages you've heard about. There's no inspirational music, no wise old master with a goatee. Just you, an uneven patch of dirt behind the house, and your father watching from the porch while sharpening a hoe. Your first lesson, swing, and swing again, and then sweep the porch. You're not sure if that last part is traditional samurai training, but your mother insists. You swing that wooden sword until your hands are red and splintered. You don't look graceful, you look like you're being attacked by an invisible bee. But slowly, your movements start to take shape. Your footwork gets less clumsy. You stop whacking yourself in the knee every other swing. Progress. The village holds a small children's tournament each spring, which is really just a chance for parents to gossip while kids wave sticks at each other. You participate for the first time and lose in the first round to a boy who says his grandfather once saw a ninja. You suspect he's lying. Still, he's got a better swing. Your wooden sword breaks during the match. You cry. The elder offers you a rice ball out of pity. It helps. Later, your father repairs the sword with some hemp cord and beeswax. It wobbles now, but you pretend it's on purpose, like it's designed for an ancient secret technique no one understands. You call it the slapping crane. You don't tell anyone that the crane mostly slaps yourself. Samurai school, or terakoya, starts soon. It's held in the local temple and run by a half-deaf monk who smells like incense and cabbage. You learn your first few Chinese characters: loyalty, honor, and fish. That last one might have been a mistake. You're not sure. The monk's handwriting is notoriously unreadable. Writing with a brush is harder than it looks. You spill ink, a lot of ink. Once on the monk's robe, he doesn't notice. Or maybe he's just accepted that children are basically chaos in sandals. You also start learning how to sit correctly. This sounds easy. It is not. Seiza, the formal kneeling posture, makes your legs go numb in under 3 minutes. You try to hide the pain but end up tipping sideways during one lesson, landing in a pile of scrolls. The monk sighs, the scrolls sigh louder, but you persist, because you're not aiming for greatness, you're just trying not to fall over anymore. Historians still argue whether samurai children were genuinely expected to master martial arts so young, or whether it was more about appearing disciplined while secretly daydreaming about soup. Evidence suggests most kids, especially in rural areas, were trained more in patience than warfare. You are, if nothing else, incredibly patient now. One quirky tradition you pick up, writing your name on everything: your sword, your sandals, a stick you claim is your lucky stick. Why? Because the monk says a warrior's name should be known, even if only by squirrels. You choose a name for your sword: Whisper Fang. It is neither quiet nor sharp, but it sounds impressive when you whisper it dramatically into the wind. Your daily life now balances between morning chores, midday lessons, and afternoon practice. There is very little fun, unless you count throwing pebbles at your brother and pretending it's for training focus. Every once in a while, a traveling warrior passes through the village, and all the boys rush to watch. You stare in awe at the polished armor, the way the man moves like he's floating. You think someday I'll look like that. Then he burps loudly, scratches himself, and complains about a rash. You think, maybe not. One evening, your father takes you on a walk to the edge of the forest. He hands you a small knife. It's dull and mostly ceremonial, but it's a rite of passage. He says, "This blade won't protect you, but holding it will remind you that you might someday need to." You nod, trying to look serious. The knife immediately slips from your hands and lands in a puddle. Not your finest moment. At home, your mother sees the knife and frowns. He's going to cut off his own toe. She's not wrong, but you feel proud anyway, because this is what being a samurai means at this stage: showing up, getting a little better each day, not stabbing yourself accidentally, the basics. You begin to notice things about your father: how his hands are always calloused, how he sharpens his blade in quiet meditation, how he never boasts. He's not a great man, not by the stories, but he's steady, reliable. And you realize being average doesn't mean being invisible. Sometimes it means being there every day, even when no one sings your name. One night you lie in bed and whisper to your sword, "One day they'll remember me." It creaks in response, probably agreeing, or just settling in the humidity. Either way, you believe it. You are now 10 years old, which means two things. Your sandals no longer fit. You're old enough to start training for real. At least that's what your father says, right after telling you to scrub the rice pot and not miss the corners this time. Real training, as it turns out, begins with sitting. A lot of sitting. You sit in Seiza for what feels like hours while your father explains Bushido, the way of the warrior. He quotes wisdom about loyalty, restraint, honor, and knowing when not to hit people in the head. You nod solemnly, even though your legs have fallen completely asleep. You try to shift quietly, but your knee cracks so loudly the neighbor's dog starts barking. You're also introduced to meditation. It's not about emptying the mind, as you're told. It's more like trying not to think about the fly crawling across your face while someone yells at you to find inner stillness. You swat at it and are promptly scolded. Stillness is hard when flies are involved. Swordplay lessons get more serious too. You learn actual forms, katas, with names like Rising Moonslash and Drifting Cloud Parry. They sound poetic, but mostly involve you tripping over your own feet or forgetting which direction to turn. You once stabbed the air dramatically and hit a clothesline. Your mother is unimpressed. So are the pants she just washed. But even with all the flailing, you improve. Your father begins teaching you to read more advanced texts. You decipher ancient poems and tactical scrolls written in flowery Kanbun Japanese that even your father admits he only sort of understands. There's one treatise by a general who insists that wars are won by breakfast. That speaks to you deeply, mostly because you're always hungry. You also study calligraphy, which you absolutely loathe. The brush never goes where you want it to. The ink runs like a scared beetle, and you once spill an entire pot of ink on the temple floor. The monk didn't speak to you for 3 days. Still, you practice. Because discipline matters, even in things you're awful at. Your social life is sparse. Your best friend is a boy named Toru, whose idea of fun is poking tree sap with a stick and seeing if it burns. Spoiler, it does. Badly. You both end up with singed eyebrows and a deep distrust of nature experiments. On the weekends, you sneak into the elder's library, which is really just a damp room with 8 scrolls and a mouse problem. You find one scroll about the exploits of Kusunoki Masashige, the famous loyalist. The text is dry, but the illustrations are dramatic. He's always mid-leap or surrounded by enemy spears. You copy one of the poses and sprain your shoulder. Worth it. Historians still argue whether low-ranking samurai like your family had access to literary education, or whether most martial households focused purely on physical skill. Some fringe scholars point to local temple records that suggest basic literacy was common. Though one document famously lists 6 students with identical names, you suspect at least 3 of them were goats. A quirky detail about your training, your father insists on shouting animal names with each strike. Crane, boar, shrimp. You're not sure this is standard technique, but it does make practice more entertaining. Toru adopts mushroom as his battle cry. It confuses everyone, especially the monk. You finally get your own set of training armor, well, pieces of it. The chest plate is made of lacquered wood, clearly repainted multiple times, and smells like roasted seaweed and regret. The helmet belonged to your uncle and still has his initials scratched into the side. You feel like a real samurai now, even though the shoulder guard keeps falling off and hitting you in the face. One afternoon, your father arranges a demonstration duel. You face off against a boy from the next village who shows up with polished gear and a sneer. The match begins. He moves like lightning. You counter with something that's technically a spin, but realistically a stumble. You both fall. At the same time, the match is declared a draw. You share rice cakes afterward, bonded by mutual embarrassment. That's how most friendships start at your level of samuraiing. There are moments when you feel the calling, like during the summer festival, when fireworks burst overhead and you catch your reflection in a water basin, armored, back straight, sword in hand. For a second, you look like someone important. Then a beetle lands on your face, and you scream like a child, which, to be fair, you still are. You go home that night thinking about your future. Will you guard a castle, patrol the mountains, deliver messages on horseback through the snow? You fantasize about heroic feats. Then you trip over a rock in the dark and fall face first into a rice paddy. Still, it was a noble fall. Probably. You are now 12, and you've just inherited something monumental. Your uncle's old suit of armor. It arrives wrapped in straw matting, tied with a frayed rope, and smelling aggressively of mothballs and something that might once have been pickled fish. You open it reverently, hoping for gleaming iron, proud family crests, and the weight of destiny. What you get is a bit less inspiring. The breastplate is dented in the shape of a teapot. One of the shoulder guards is missing entirely. The helmet looks like someone once used it as a cooking pot, and probably recently. There's a deep scratch across the lacquered chest that spells out something suspiciously close to a haiku, if you're being poetic. Your mother raises an eyebrow and says, "At least it's still mostly whole." Still, it's yours now. You try it on, and immediately realize it's 2 sizes too big. The helmet slides down over your eyes, and the chest plate makes it impossible to scratch your nose, which becomes an urgent need the moment you put it on. But you stand there proudly, wobbling slightly, and your father nods as if you've just been knighted by the emperor himself. You spend the next week adjusting the straps and adding bits of twine where metal is supposed to be. Toru helps you line the inside with straw so it stops bruising your ribs. He suggests painting a dragon on the back. You settle for a potato shape. Close enough. Then comes the big moment. Your first patrol. It's not a battlefield. It's the village perimeter. You walk slowly, sweating under the sun, trying to look fierce while tripping on your own shadow. You wave at a farmer who squints at you and says, "Didn't you used to be shorter?" You nod with as much honor as you can muster. You practice walking with the armor for hours. It creaks like an old temple gate with every step. The local children follow behind, mimicking your exaggerated movements and calling you Sir Clanky. You consider this a badge of honor, sort of. There's one moment, just one, where you catch your reflection in the well's water. For a split second, you see a warrior, a samurai. Even if the warrior is mostly obscured by sweat and a helmet that refuses to stay straight. Meanwhile, your father begins training you in more formal tactics. You learn how to march in formation, poorly. You learn how to hold a spear, awkwardly. You also learn that no one looks cool falling face first while trying to spin a naginata. One afternoon, your father arranges for you and 3 other local boys to practice sparring with wooden staves. It starts off well with grunts and formal bows. 10 seconds later, it devolves into shrieking and someone getting poked in the nose. You all laugh, except the boy with the nosebleed. He cries, understandably. Historians still debate how much real combat training young samurai received before adulthood. Some claim boys your age were already serving in small skirmishes. Others suggest most village youths learned more about sweeping courtyards than spilling blood. In your case, sweeping is definitely the greater skill. Your armor becomes a sort of second skin. You hang it in your room at night, carefully adjusting the ties so it doesn't collapse like a haunted puppet. Every morning you bow to it, just in case. You don't believe it's possessed, but better safe than sorry. A quirky tradition in your village. Before any patrol, the boys chew a bit of salted plum and spit it at a rock that vaguely resembles a horse. Why? No one remembers. But the rock's name is Shinpei, and he's considered lucky. You once forget to spit and trip over your own spear. Coincidence? You don't think so. Occasionally, you're allowed to accompany your father on guard duty at the village entrance. This mostly involves standing quietly, looking serious, and trying not to fall asleep. One time, a traveling merchant arrives with an ox cart full of clay dolls. Your job is to inspect them for danger. You poke one. It wobbles. Everyone agrees you've done your duty. The armor, for all its faults, begins to feel like part of your identity. You learn where it pinches, where it rattles, where the rust is too stubborn to scrub. You even give it a name, Silent Thunder. Toru laughs for 10 straight minutes when he hears it, but you stand by the choice. You also begin to understand what it means to carry something that once belonged to someone else. Your uncle wasn't famous. He never won any battles or wrote any poems. But he wore this armor for years, protected people, got married, grew old. That matters. One evening, during a spring storm, you take the armor outside and sit with it under the eaves, listening to the rain patter on its plates. You wonder what stories it would tell if it could speak. Probably nothing dramatic. Maybe something like, "Stop leaving me next to the pickles." But still, stories. You're not a hero. Not yet. Maybe never. But you're here. You're trying. And that, it turns out, is more than most. The first time you're sent into battle, it's mostly by accident. You're 14, armed with a bent spear and the full weight of teenage anxiety. A minor border skirmish has flared up between your clan and a neighboring one. Nothing epic, just a small disagreement over a tax shipment, a goat, and someone's brother-in-law making fun of someone else's mustache. You are not expected to fight. You're there as a backup, an extra body in the rear line, told to stand straight and try not to drop anything important. You feel honored and terrified, mostly terrified. Your job is to guard the supply cart. It's pulled by an aging ox named Soba who farts whenever nervous, which is often. The cart carries essentials, dried rice, spare sandals, a bucket of salted fish, and a jar of plum paste that someone dropped and quietly put back upside down. You stand next to it, spear in hand, sweat pooling behind your knees, waiting for glory. Glory does not come. Instead, the battle happens in a field so muddy, your foot gets stuck within minutes. A few men shout. A few arrows are loosed into the sky, most of which land harmlessly in a nearby ditch. The two sides scream insults at each other for a solid hour before someone from your side slips on a turnip and accidentally charges the enemy. Everyone panics. The skirmish ends 5 minutes later when it starts raining hard enough to ruin everyone's motivation. You never leave your post. No one attacks the cart. Soba remains impressively flatulent. When the soldiers return, they look tired, wet, and vaguely annoyed. One man claims he disarmed an enemy using only a glare. Another insists he was about to win single-handedly, but got distracted by a bee. Historians still argue whether this battle even counted as a real one. The official records list it as a minor engagement. An unofficial scroll just says, "a mess." You're praised for your steadiness, though you know the truth. You were frozen stiff and couldn't move if you tried. Still, praise is praise. You receive a dried fish as a reward. You eat it with the solemn dignity of a war hero. Sort of. Later that night, you lie awake in your damp clothes, armor rusting slightly from the rain, and think, so that's war. You expected trumpets, chaos, maybe a slow-motion leap through the air. Instead, it was cold feet, bad aim, and one of your comrades getting his pants stuck on a fence. A quirky thing happens after. You get your first war story. Even if it's not exciting, it's yours. You tell Toru about it, emphasizing your guard duty and the high pressure of protecting the fish jar. He's impressed, or at least he pretends to be, which is close enough for friendship. From then on, you're occasionally assigned to minor posts, watching over bridge crossings, escorting messengers, patrolling nearby roads that no one uses. It's more about being seen than actually doing anything. Visibility, your father says, is part of the job. If people know you're there, they behave better. You test this theory by standing at a crossroads with your spear at an impressive angle. A passing farmer hands you a sweet potato and says, "Thank you." You assume that means it worked. You develop what your mother calls your battle face, a mixture of squinting and trying not to yawn. You practice in the mirror. The effect is unsettling. Historians still debate how involved young samurai were in local conflicts. Some records suggest teens as young as 12 saw battle. Others say their roles were largely symbolic until they proved themselves. In your case, you are definitely symbolic. A very damp, very itchy symbol of readiness. You continue training. Your spear technique improves marginally. You stop hitting yourself in the leg when you spin it. A definite win. Your swordplay gets better too. Less flailing, more control. You learn to read the movement of your opponent, which is helpful when your opponent is Toru, who grunts loudly before every swing like he's trying to scare a ghost. You also start to understand strategy, how a battle isn't just about swinging harder, but about waiting, watching, and knowing when to do absolutely nothing. That last part, you're already very good at. One rainy morning, your father takes you up a hill overlooking the village. He points to the winding paths below, the rice fields, the slow river. "You know what this is?" he asks. You guess, "Our land?" He shakes his head. "It's what you protect, not just the soil, the people, the way they live." That's the real job. It's not a dramatic speech, but it sticks with you. Even as the rain runs down your neck and you start sneezing, you return home, soggy and thoughtful, and sit beside your armor. It creaks when you touch it, like it's waking up. You don't feel like a warrior yet, but maybe you're becoming one. A very cautious, mildly competent one. The kind of warrior who brings his own towel. Later, you carve a tiny mark on the inside of your spear's handle, one for the day you stood your ground behind a cart of supplies, not flashy, but real, and somehow, that's enough. You're 15 when you first kill someone, not in a blaze of glory, not in a grand duel under cherry blossoms, just a clumsy, desperate moment at twilight, where instinct acts faster than thought. It happens during a patrol gone wrong. A group of bandits, real ones this time, not disgruntled farmers, ambush your small unit near the edge of a bamboo forest. They come fast, wild-eyed, wielding chipped blades and hunger. You're not supposed to be in the front line, but when one of the older samurai falls, everything dissolves into chaos. You're face to face with a man who smells like old wine and river water, and he's raising a cleaver the size of your arm. You don't remember making the decision, you just thrust. It connects. He stumbles, falls, silence. The world doesn't pause for you. Around you, the scuffle continues, grunts, steel, shouting, the sickening thud of bodies hitting ground. But your part is over. You stare at what you've done, at the stillness in his eyes, and realize with horrifying clarity that you can't take it back. No one congratulates you, no one scolds you, it's just accepted. When the skirmish ends, your father pulls you aside. His voice is low. "You did what you had to." You nod. You say nothing else for the rest of the night. Sleep doesn't come, not even close. In the weeks that follow, no one mentions the bandit. Not directly. You're back to training, patrolling, tending to horses. Life continues, but you feel different. Like something inside you is cracked and the light looks strange now as it passes through. You start noticing things others don't. Tension in a soldier's shoulders, the way villagers glance away when passing armed men. You understand suddenly why your father polishes his blade alone at night, why he sharpens in silence. It's not just the edge he's working on, it's something heavier. There's no ceremony for your first kill, no scroll, no feast, just a quiet moment that becomes part of you, like a scar that doesn't show but itches when it rains. And yet something else grows in the space it leaves behind, awareness. You begin to move differently. You spar with more control, not because you want to win, but because you know what winning can cost. You watch your surroundings more. You learn to listen, Not just to commands, but to silences between words. Once Toru catches you staring off into the mountains and says, "You think too much for a warrior." You smile weakly. "Maybe I'm not one yet." He pats your shoulder. "You are. You just know it now." In the archives of boring history, your skirmish with the bandits won't earn a paragraph, probably not even a line. There's no legendary clash, no famous general, just a forgotten ambush in a damp forest. But for you, it's the moment you truly join the long, quiet lineage of those who carried blades not for honor or glory, but because someone had to. And the strange thing is, after a while, you learn to carry it, not with pride, not with shame, just carry it. You go back to your routine. Your feet know the weight of armor better now. Your hands know the rhythm of sharpening a blade without slipping into memory. Your eyes, though, your eyes are never quite as bright. People begin to treat you a little differently, not with reverence, but with something close to recognition. A nod that says, "You've been there." You nod back. It's enough. You find small comforts in small things, the way plum blossoms bloom even after snow, the way horses chew when they're sleepy, the way Toru sings terribly while polishing his armor, as if daring the world to judge him. You're still young, still learning, but now you know what it means when your father says, "We protect the way people live," because sometimes that protection means doing something you'll never speak of again, and then waking up the next day to carry water for your grandmother and chase the neighbor's goats out of the rice field. Quiet heroism doesn't echo, but it lasts. You're 16 when war begins. Not a clash, not a skirmish, but a full, breathing thing, an ugly machine of politics, pride, and power. The border tensions that once simmered quietly now burst into flame, and your province is drawn into a spiral that no one can stop. One morning, a formal letter arrives, summoning your father and his men to the regional lord's campaign. You watch him read it in silence. His face remains unreadable, but you can tell. He already knew this day was coming. He calls you in before dusk, and for the first time, you feel like you're not just his son, not just a student. You're something else now, an extension of his legacy. "I won't stop you," he says, "but this is not the same as before. This is not training, not bandits." You nod. You've felt the shift in the wind, the silence in the village, the weight behind the merchant's laughter. You leave with the rest of the retinue 5 days later. The march is long, dusty, quiet in the way that speaks of fear more than discipline. You travel through towns that have already seen battle, where homes are half standing and people look at you not with hope but exhaustion. You meet soldiers from other provinces. Some are old and broken. Some are younger than you. None smile with their eyes. The first siege is brutal. The castle isn't grand, just a small stronghold on a hill held by a rival clan that refuses to surrender. You're positioned on the outer perimeter at first, running messages, helping with supplies. You hear the arrows before you ever see one, but that doesn't last long. On the third day, your unit is called forward. Smoke, screams, steel. You do your part. You fight. You survive. That night, as the stronghold finally falls, you sit behind a broken cart, blood drying on your wrists, your body too exhausted to tremble. You stare at the sky and realize it looks exactly the same as it did back home. Toru finds you, offers you a flask of something that burns your throat. You drink anyway. "First siege is always the worst," he says. You almost ask how many he's seen, but you don't. You both already know it's more than one. In the weeks that follow, you move from town to town, stronghold to stronghold. Some surrender, some don't. You learn to read the signs. The way flags are hung, how fresh the horses look, how desperate the eyes at the gate are. You also learn things no one teaches, like how to bind a wound with your sash when the medic is too far, how to spot a trap in a rice paddy, how to keep your hands steady even when your heart won't stop racing. War is not what the ballads promised. There are no glorious speeches before dawn, no duels under cherry trees, just orders, hunger, mud, and a constant ache in your back from sleeping in armor. But in the quiet moments, by firelight, after a long march, when the stars come out, you catch yourself thinking about home. about your mother's cooking, about the way your village smells after rain. You think of the girl who used to bring water to the training yard, the one who laughed when you dropped your sword in the well. You wonder if she still lives there, if she remembers your name. One night, as your unit rests near a ravine, an old veteran named Jin tells a story. It's about a goose that saved a village by honking when enemy soldiers approached. Everyone laughs, even the grim ones. You laugh too. It feels strange, like your body forgot how to do it. But it feels good. And for a moment, war disappears. Just for a moment. You're 17 when the tide turns. Not in your favor. The army you've marched with for months, your father's unit, your companions, your friends, meets a force far more prepared than any you've faced before. The banners of the enemy shimmer across the ridge, crimson and gold, like fire against the stormy sky. Whispers run through camp that night about spies, supplies that never arrived, allies who were supposed to flank but didn't. You sit sharpening your blade in silence, the whetstone scraping in rhythm with your heartbeat. Your father calls for you. He doesn't speak much, just looks at you for a long time, then hands you a scroll. "Give this to Lord Oka if we don't return," he says. You want to argue. Tell him that of course you'll return. But something in his voice stills your tongue. Dawn comes quickly. So does the battle. It's not chaos. Not at first. Formations are followed, signals sent. You hold the right flank, holding fast as the enemy pushes hard and fast. You fight as you were taught, grounded, fluid, breathing like the tide, until the left collapses. You don't see who falls first, only the domino that follows. A surge of cavalry breaks your rear line. Screams, horses, steel on bone. You're dragged into a mess of confusion and noise. You lose sight of your father. You don't remember how you get separated. You just remember running, toward the hill, the last fallback point. A horn sounds, but it's not yours. The banner above your head is torn and falling. Your leg gives out when an arrow grazes your thigh. You stumble behind a half-burnt tree trying to catch breath, vision blurred. Toru appears, bloody, limping, but alive. "We have to go," he says, pulling you up. "Now." You don't ask about the others. There's no time. The retreat is messy, not planned, not brave, just survival. You flee through thick woods, mud pulling at your feet like it wants you to stay and rot. You pass the broken remains of a cart, a helmet with no head under it, a stream that now runs red. 2 days pass before you find friendly territory. They let you in, feed you, bandage your leg, but the silence says more than words. Of your unit, only 12 return. Your father isn't among them. You sit by the riverbank for hours that night, scroll still clutched in your hand, unopened. You should go to Lord Oka, fulfill your duty. But something in you, grief, guilt, exhaustion, roots you to the spot. You think of your father, not as the warrior everyone admired, but as the man who once chased chickens with you in the courtyard, who taught you how to tell good steak from bad with just a sniff. You cry for the first time in years, not loud, not dramatic, just a slow, quiet stream that refuses to stop. And then, slowly, you begin to move again. Not because you're ready, but because the world hasn't stopped. Not for your father, not for you. You deliver the scroll 3 days later. Lord Oka reads it in silence, his jaw tight. He doesn't thank you, doesn't need to. You see it in the way he nods, the way he places the scroll beside a tray of incense without a word. You ask for leave, not to go home, to go north. There are rumors of a new front, a place where the fighting hasn't grown thick yet, a place where a young soldier can still make a difference. Lord Oka grants it. No ceremony, no praise. Just a signed order and a quiet, "Don't waste what your father gave." You leave the next morning, alone, but not empty, never empty again. The road north is quieter than you expect, not empty, just hushed. Villages half abandoned, rice fields left untended, homes where smoke should rise but doesn't. You pass through them like a shadow. People glance up but rarely speak. Everyone's grown used to loss. You stop offering your name. By the time you reach the northern camp, the sentries almost don't believe you're a soldier. You're covered in travel dust, your armor mismatched, repaired with string and scraps, and your eyes too tired to command respect. But the scroll Lord Oka gave you carries weight. They assign you to the third spear under Commander Hoshida. She's older than you, sharper than steel, and wastes no time with sympathy. You carry a sword, you fight, she says. Die well or live clean. Either way, don't cause paperwork. You like her immediately. Training begins again, not the gentle kind. You run drills through rain, mud, and snow. Your arms burn from archery practice. Your feet blister from long marches in wet straw sandals. But it all feels right. Purpose tastes better than comfort. You meet Yori during sparring. He's fast. Too fast. You lose 3 matches before you learn to predict his rhythm, catch the beat between his steps. When you finally knock him down, he laughs instead of sulking. You're learning, he grins lying on his back. That's dangerous. You shrug. So standing still. He offers a hand. From that day on, you become partners. He's from the coast. Used to be a fisherman's son, netting squid before dawn. His hands are rough, his laugh rougher, but his heart steady. He fights beside you, eats beside you, bleeds beside you. Sometimes he talks about going home, building boats instead of breaking bones. Sometimes you let yourself dream about it too. But war doesn't wait for peace to feel ready. Your first battle up north comes in the dead of winter. The enemy's trying to seize a pass, narrow and cold with cliffs on both sides, perfect for ambush. The plan is simple. Bait them in, trap them, finish them quickly. Simple plans are rarely easy. Snow falls fast that morning, wet and heavy. You crouch behind a crag, breath fogging your face. Your fingers are numb, even inside your gloves. When the enemy charges, they come with fire. Oil pots lit mid-air. The snow turns to slush, then mud, then steam. Screams echo in the mist. You hold your ground with Yori, slashing through the confusion, trying to see more than silhouettes. Then a blast throws you backward. Your ears ring, your side aches. You can't tell if it's bruised or broken. You try to rise, fail, try again. Your hand finds your sword just as a shape looms through the fog. But it's not the enemy, it's Yori. He grabs your arm, pulls you up, half drags you behind cover. You're both bleeding, both coughing, both smiling like idiots. Still standing? He asks. Barely. Close enough. You win that battle. Barely. The pass holds. The third spear limps back to camp with fewer than half its number. Hoshida nods once when she sees you and Yori alive. She doesn't ask questions. She doesn't need to. You've earned her silence. Later, when your ribs are wrapped and your stomach's full of broth, you sit under the stars with Yori. He says nothing for a long time. Then, do you ever wonder what it's all for? You don't answer right away, but you think of your father, of the scroll, the retreat, the promise. I used to, you say, but not anymore. He nods. You sit together in the quiet, the cold settling in again. But this time it feels less lonely, because somewhere between the scars and silence, you've become more than just a name on a scroll. You've become someone who endures, and that in this broken world is more than enough. Spring takes its time returning. Up in the northern hills, snow melts slowly, reluctantly. Rivers overflow their banks. Paths once solid turn to slick clay. Even the wind feels undecided, caught between frost and bloom. But the war is not indecisive. Reinforcements arrive. New recruits, barely old enough to shave, look at you like you're a relic. Some whisper stories about the one who walked from the southern front. Others just nod in stiff respect. You don't correct them. If myth gives them courage, let it. Yori starts calling you general, half joking. You tell him to shut up. He laughs harder every time. The third spear is ordered to push west, to retake a chain of watchtowers that once lit the border trail. You don't ask what happened to the last unit sent. The silence tells enough. You ride with a caravan of supply carts and mules. The mountain passes are treacherous now, mudslides, broken bridges, bandits too desperate to care about flags. You lose 2 wagons in the first week. No one even complains anymore. The first tower you reclaim is abandoned, half-burned, stripped of iron and food. But the second one fights back. You're pinned behind a collapsed stone wall, arrows thudding into the earth beside you. Yori lies flat, muttering curses in rhythm with every volley. You ever think, he says, we should have just opened a tea shop? You grunt. We'd argue over the menu. He snorts, then bolts forward, drawing fire away so you can flank the tower. You breach it at dusk. It takes less than 20 minutes, but it feels like hours. Inside, you find 3 defenders. Teenagers. Scared. Hungry. One throws a rock instead of a blade. You don't kill them. You bind their hands and give them rice. Hoshida doesn't question it. Something in her eyes says, I did the same once. By midsummer, the border trail is yours. You eat grilled onions by campfires. You clean wounds with boiled wine. You write your first report on silk paper using a borrowed brush. It feels like pretending, but when the courier takes it and bows, something shifts. You are not pretending anymore. One morning, Hoshida summons you privately. She lays out a map, points to a forest marked in red ink. This, she says, was where your father's unit disappeared. You blink. The world narrows to the edge of that parchment. She continues. Scouts saw smoke, no flags, no banners, just a few figures moving like ghosts. If it's deserters or survivors, I want you to see it first. Your hands tremble. She pretends not to notice. Take whoever you trust, she says. Go light. You nod once. Yori doesn't hesitate. Of course I'm coming, he says, like it's obvious. So you set out together with 2 quiet scouts and 4 days' rations. The forest is old, older than the war. The trees twist like knotted fingers. No birdsong, no paths, just echoes and shadows. On the second night, you find a shrine half swallowed by moss. You light incense. Yori whispers something in his coastal dialect. You close your eyes and dream of your father. He's not giving orders, not marching, just sitting by a river, washing his hands. When he looks up, he says, You're not done yet. You wake before dawn. The smoke appears at midday, thin, steady, cooking fire, not signal. You draw your blade. The scouts hang back. You and Yori move forward, step by step. At the clearing's edge, you freeze. There's a tent, 2 old mules, a rack of fish drying over embers, and an old man stirring a pot. His hair is gray, his armor rusted, but his eyes. Father, you whisper. He looks up slowly, and the forest forgets how to breathe. The clearing feels like a dream, too quiet, too still. You don't move, not yet. The old man sets down his ladle, slow and deliberate, as if he's sensed you long before your arrival. His gaze doesn't widen in shock, nor does his posture stiffen like a man caught in danger. He just looks at you, at your face, at your uniform, at the sword in your hand. Yori speaks first, whispering, That's your father? You nod. The old man rises, joints creaking under the weight of time. He's thinner than you remember, his frame shrunk by years of cold and silence. His beard is unkempt, his boots are patched with cloth, but when he speaks, his voice cuts through the hush like a blade. You brought company. You step forward, hand shaking. Captain Yano, you say, like a question, like a spell. His lips twitch. No one's called me that in 17 years. Yori mutters, Well, someone should have. The old man eyes Yori, then gestures to a flat log near the fire. Sit. You came a long way. You sit. He hands you a bowl of stew without asking. It tastes like dried fish, wild roots, and bitterness. I buried the others, he says. No preamble, no welcome, just the truth. 2 weeks after we went missing, the snows came fast, supply lines cut, command forgot us. You swallow hard. I thought you were dead. I was. For a while. Silence again. Yori watches you both but doesn't interrupt. The fire crackles. Your father speaks slowly, as though unsure what parts of the story deserve air. There were 12 of us left after the 3rd skirmish. We fled east, deeper into the trees. The wounded slowed us. So did guilt. I gave orders I shouldn't have. Sent boys to hold passes that weren't worth it. He leans forward. And then I stopped giving orders. We built this. We waited for a summons. It never came. You whisper, you could have returned. He nods, slowly. Could have. You feel a rising heat, not from the fire, but from somewhere in your chest. You left us. A pause. I know. You stand. The stew drops from your hands, bowl clattering on roots. Yori flinches, but doesn't move. You stare at the man who taught you to hold a blade, who kissed your mother on the forehead every morning, who told bedtime stories of honor and sacrifice, and then vanished. Why didn't you come back? Your voice cracks. We lit candles for 10 winters. Mother died thinking you'd drowned. I joined the army because I thought I could find you. Your father closes his eyes. The wind moves through the trees like a breath held too long. When the war forgets you, he says, you forget yourself. You take a shaky step forward. But I remembered. He opens his eyes. So did I, he says. Every day. He reaches into a satchel and pulls out a crumpled letter. Your handwriting aged and smudged. One of the dozens you sent to outposts, to couriers, to ghosts. I found this, he says, at an abandoned fort 4 years ago. You stare. You had forgotten that letter. You wrote it during basic training, thinking it a futile act. It simply read, if you're alive, I forgive you, but please come home. Your father folds the letter, presses it to his chest. I read it every day, and still, I didn't come. You don't know if your legs are trembling from cold or fury. Yori speaks, soft but certain. You came looking for closure. Maybe you found it. But we should move. That's what commanders do. You nod, without knowing why. Your father doesn't ask to follow. He just starts packing. Quietly, efficiently. And when you leave the clearing, he walks beside you, not as a deserter, not as a ghost, but as a man reclaiming the story that tried to forget him. The walk back to camp is slow. Your boots trace the same path you took just hours ago, but now each step feels heavier. The snow is softer underfoot, the wind less biting, but something inside you churns. Behind you, your father walks without a word. And beside you, Yori doesn't break the silence, though you can feel his eyes studying both of you. Two men caught in a timeline that cracked long ago and never fully healed. When the camp comes into view, the hush breaks. The sentries see your father first, and they draw their weapons. Yori lifts a hand immediately, commanding calm. He's with us, you say, loud enough for everyone to hear. The soldiers exchange glances. It spreads fast. News travels without needing a voice. The deserter has returned. The man from the snow fables, Captain Yano, your father. You enter the command tent before anyone can gather the nerve to ask questions. The fire inside is dying. The maps are curled with damp. The ink stains on the table feel ancient. Yori shuts the flap behind you, nodding at the two of you to speak. You face your father, heart thumping like a distant war drum. They'll want answers. He nods. They deserve them. You sit. He remains standing. Then he does something you've never seen him do, not even as a young officer, not even when your mother cried over his silence. He bows, deep, low, humble. I abandon my post, he says. And the men under me, I won't defend it. I only ask that what I've learned, what I've kept, might help save those who are still left. You stare at him. He looks up, and for the first time you see not the man who left, but the man who broke. The war hadn't just swallowed cities and battalions, it had eaten names, souls, memories. But somehow, through fire and frost, he had survived. You speak slowly. You'll stand trial. He nods. But until then, you continue, you'll help me navigate what's left of this valley. He exhales. There are passes only the old roads know. I can show you. Yori steps forward, skeptical but calm. The men will whisper. You turn to him. Let them. Outside the tent, voices rise. Not anger, just awe. They're seeing a legend move through the smoke. A man returned from the dead. You leave the tent as the sun begins to break through the clouds, just a sliver, just a breath of warmth. Your father stands beside you, his frame still thin, but taller now, steadier. And the soldiers part as he walks. No salute, just space, respect wrapped in uncertainty. That night, you write another letter. This time, not to a ghost, not to the past, but to yourself. Sometimes history writes you out. Sometimes you must write yourself back in. The ink smears. The wind howls. And the war, though not yet over, feels just a little quieter. The final days of snow come like a soft exhale from the heavens. Your camp, once a brittle cluster of tents buried in silence, now stirs with motion. Men sharpen blades not just for defense but for ceremony. Uniforms are mended. Letters are penned again. Not farewell notes but messages about returning home. About brothers lost and remembered. About second chances. The war, though not declared over, has receded beyond the mountains, where rumor has it the generals are trading silence for signatures. And your father, now simply Yano again, is no longer a fugitive nor a myth. He walks among the men, sharing maps he once buried beneath stones, helping retrace steps once lost to time. He doesn't command, he doesn't ask to be forgiven, but the men begin to nod to him when he passes. Quiet acknowledgments, a slow, earned trust. One evening, as the sun stretches gold across the snow, he sits across from you by the fire. "You've grown into a better version of the man I tried to be," he says softly. You offer him a half smile. "You showed me what not to do." He chuckles. A father's most powerful lesson. You both fall quiet. The crackle of pine is the only sound for a long while. Then, almost absently, he adds, "You know, that night in the tea house, the long nap, I dreamt of you." You look up. "I dreamt you were standing in a river," he continues, "not drowning, just standing while everyone rushed past you. You held a lantern above your head, and I knew, somehow, that as long as that light stayed dry, I'd find my way home." The image roots in you. A lantern, in water, a sun, a guide. You don't say anything, but your hands tighten around your teacup. A week later, the orders arrive. The unit is to return to the capital. Marches will be staggered. Records will be reconciled. Lives will be counted. What remains of them? The morning you break camp, there's no grand farewell, just steam from mouths, just boots in snow, and your father, walking beside you, not ahead, not behind, just beside, like a man ready to begin again. You pass the place where the tea house once stood. There's nothing left but stones and roots. But in the center, where the fire pit once burned, someone has placed a new object. A single iron kettle, left upright, its spout pointing west. A marker, a memory. You smile. Maybe someone else took a nap here once too, and maybe they also dreamed of coming home. So you march on, slowly, surely. And as the snow fades behind you, the road widens, and the nap ends. But the dream begins anew,